Last night, President Donald Trump gave his second State of the Union address. He spoke for over 2+ hours, but I'm going to give you a brief summary of exactly what the president said and what the president didn't say. Tyrone Bowman live. Welcome to the State of a Union address analysis and commentary from last night's address. Okay, coming from the Hill, this article was written by Naal Stanage, and I'll get into that in a moment. Meanwhile, I want to stop and just say thank you to the men and women who have subscribed to Tyrone Bowman Live. I appreciate your subscription. Thank you for all the comments that you all always are talking about when you join me in the comments section. I appreciate that as well. It's always good to interact with one another. But now I want to get down to business. According to The Hill, 5 takeaways from President Trump's State of the Union address. President Donald Trump delivered the first official State of the Union address of his second term on Wednesday. The speech came with the president beset by low approval ratings, especially on the economy, but seeking to rally his party ahead of November's midterms. Trump also gave his address, which clocked in just short of an hour and 50 minutes. During a time of a rising tension with Iran, the president has dispatched 2 aircraft carrier groups to the region. Here are the major takeaways from the speech. Iran's plans remain murky. That's number one. The most substantive policy question hanging over the address was whether Trump would make his plans for Iran clearer. He didn't, or at least not by much. Quote, "We are in negotiations with them. They want to make a deal, but we haven't heard those secret words. We will never have a nuclear weapon," Trump said. "My preference is to solve this problem through diplomacy." We will never have a nuclear weapon, Trump said. He said, "My preference is to solve this problem through diplomacy. But one thing is certain, I will never allow the world's #1 sponsor of terror, which they are by far, to have a nuclear weapon. Can't let that happen," end quote. There are a number of complexities to this ahead of talks between Iran and the United States that are set to take place in Geneva on this coming Thursday. First, Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian told the United Nations General Assembly last September, "Iran has never sought and will never seek to build a nuclear weapon," quote, end quote. Second, elsewhere in his speech, Trump suggested, as he has done before, that Iran's capability when it comes to long-range weapons, regardless of their nuclear or non-nuclear nature, is its own hurdle. And he also condemned Tehran's killing of protesters around the turn of the year. The bottom line is it remains unclear exactly what Trump is proposing as a solution to a hazily defined problem, or whether he envisions the regime in Tehran staying in power. So Trump is seeking a second-term message. The early part of the speech, when the viewing figures for the live TV audiences are typically at their height, focused mostly on the economy. Some of Trump's claims were valid, such as the stock market being at or near record highs, and some were not. He did not, as he claimed, inherit a nation with inflation at record levels by any standard measure. Analyzed inflation in January 2025, when he began his second term, was at 3.0%, and the last 5 figures for this January is at 2.4%. Trump's approval ratings are particularly parlous when it comes to public perceptions of rising prices, too. In the recent Washington Post ABC News Ipsos poll, 65% of adults disapproved of his handling of inflation, while only 32% approved. On Tuesday night, he returned to a version of an attack he has made previously, contending that Democrats had suddenly used the word affordability, a word they just used it. Somebody gave it to them. Trump argued it was Democrats who were in fact to blame for those prices. He also slammed the opposition party for voting against last year's tax cut and spending bills, saying they wanted large scale tax increases to hurt the people instead. So there's going to be a big confrontation on immigration. The most dramatic moments of the address came perhaps predictably on the topic of immigration. At one point, Trump said that his audience should stand up and show your support if they agree with the statement that the first duty of the American government is to protect American citizens, not illegal aliens. Democrats overwhelmingly remained seated, which is hardly a surprise given their fervent opposition to the aggressive enforcement actions taken by ICE and by other agents and under the auspices of the Department of Homeland Security. Those actions led to the shooting to deaths of two U.S. citizens in Minnesota, in January, Renee Good and Alex Pretty. Still, Trump glared at the Democrats and said, "You should be ashamed of yourselves not standing up." Well, why should the Democrats stand up? When Obama was in office, I recall very clearly that a man ran down to the front of the podium where Obama was standing and called him a liar. Remember that? You know, Republicans have a selective type of memory. When Obama was president, the Republicans hardly ever stood up and agreed with him or Biden or Obama. And now all of a sudden, they want the opposition party to approve of and to applaud everything that they're doing. That's why it's called the opposition. The opposition does not go along with the majority. That would be stupid of them to go along with them. So as the Democrats, they said, we're going to sit it out. And many Democrats did not attend the State of the Union address. Those actions led to the shooting to death of two citizens in Minnesota. And as Trump was glaring, he took turns jabbing at the Democrats. There was also a shouting match revolving around Representative Ilhan Omar, a Democrat from Minnesota, who shouted that Trump had killed Americans. When Trump accused the Somali community, of which Omar is a member, of having pillaged billions of taxpayer dollars, Omar could be heard shouting that he was a liar. Trump had already taken aim at the high court in the immediate wake of the justices striking down many of his key tariffs last week. The president had taken particular umbrage at three conservative justices who ruled against his wishes, including two whom he appointed during his first term, Neil Gorsuch and Amy Coney Barrett. Last week, Trump said the decision was an embarrassment to their families. You know, sometimes, I really am trying to find the good in what this man said last night. And it's hard. Because the State of the Union address is supposed to be about the state of the union. It's not supposed to be about attacking people. And for the record, whoever was paid to write that speech, they wrote it in such glaring terms to make it appear like there's nothing wrong in the country. There's plenty wrong in America. Does it mean we don't love America because we voice opposition about the wrongs? No, that's not what that means. It means that you have to address them. Just having a conversation about what is wrong is hard for the Republicans. So he said they were an embarrassment to their families. That seemed to raise the stakes for an epic confrontation on Tuesday night when four justices, John Roberts, Elena Kagan, Brett Kavanaugh, and Barrett, were in attendance. I'll tell you who wasn't in attendance: Justice Clarence Thomas. Justice Ketanji Brown was not in attendance. And also Justice Sotomayor was not in attendance. If I were a black justice and you did nothing but insult me every time you got a chance, I wouldn't come to the State of the Union address either. Trump called the ruling unfortunate and disappointed, but he never let loose completely against the court. No, because he's going to need the court to get his agenda. So when it comes to parties, both parties got what they wanted, really. In the modern age, State of the Union addresses simply don't matter as much as they once did. Not so long ago, the annual speech was still seen as a rare opportunity for an American president to speak to the public unfiltered. These days, Trump often does that several times a day on social media. Still, the speech does offer a massive TV audience. Well, big deal. I mean, so it offers a massive television audience. Is it going to solve the massive problems of the television audience? Republicans are likely to be broadly satisfied with the contrast Trump drew on hot button issues like immigration and transgender rights, and by the fact that he avoided speaking the kind of colossal controversy that might have drowned everything else out. Well, newsflash, Republicans, you're not going to want to hear this, but I'm going to say it. I'm trying to say it in a nice way. They're always talking about this supposed to be the conservative party and the family values party. And they would have you to believe that nobody in the Republican Party is ever involved in anything outside of traditional family values. Isn't that right? Well, within the Republican Party, you have transgender people, you have homosexuals, you have an entire LGBTQ plus community. And they're also in the Senate and they're also in Congress. And you want to try to make it look like that it's a Democratic thing. And at least the Democrats are bold enough to own up to who they are. But the hypocritical Republicans are hiding behind their true identities as to who they are, because they've lied so much when it comes to traditional family values. And now they put themselves in a quandary that they can't open up their mouths and tell the truth. And when you become a Republican and you buy all in, you have to own everything that Republicans say and do. Since they put him in power, now he's really one of them. And the Democrats, the Donald Trump that they once knew, they have no respect for him at this point in time. Democrats plainly don't believe he did anything to change a political landscape in which they fancy their chances of taking control of the House at a minimum in November. Virginia Governor Abigail Spanberger delivered her party's response, framed her argument around three questions. Is the president working to make life more affordable for you and your family? Is the president working to keep Americans safe? Back at home and abroad, is the president working for you? She asks rhetorically. I am going to do a separate video as to why the Democrats are going to win big during the midterm elections. But I will say this as a preview. If you have a sore on your hand and you try to deny that it's there, by becoming psychosomatically induced within your mind to make you think that you don't hurt when you're in pain. You have to deal with the fact that there is a sore on your hand, get it cleaned out, get the poison out so the body can heal. To ignore the fact that millions upon millions upon millions upon millions of Americans are suffering and they're hurting. They're hurting economically, they're hurting educationally, they're hurting when it comes to Medicaid and Medicare. The agriculture industry is hurting. It is dismally devastated. Farmers are upset. They're having to borrow money from the government in order to keep their farms operating, which makes them debt incurred to the government. Unemployment is at an all-time high. People go to the store. I see them with my own eyes all the time. They don't know what to buy because many times they'll go to the counter, they got the SNAP benefits, and they don't have enough money. Even people who have enough money are looking for computer-generated coupons so they can save a couple dollars. Everywhere you go, prices are astronomically high. Look at Whole Foods. Whole Foods and Trader Joe's and Sprouts are three of the places where you spend so much money. What's happening, Fred? Welcome to the program. Stuff in Whole Food, it is enormously high. In Sprouts Farmers Market, the stuff is exorbitantly high. When you go to Trader Joe's, you can go to Trader Joe's and buy stuff out of there that you can go down to ShopRite and buy. Or Lions, or Superfresh. People can't keep trying to deceive the American populace and American people and making them think that everything is okay when everything is not okay. Sometimes, if you're a politician, you just have to put it like this: I screwed up. I made terrible decisions. I made terrible mistakes. But if you give me enough time, I can correct the wrong that I've done. That is something people will appreciate. But when you pretentiously say that the State of the Union is fine, the Republicans are good, the Democrats are bad, and blah, 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 now you're going to have the same thing going on and on and on. It's going to be a long, contentious summer. Down in Texas, they know that Jasmine Crockett has a great opportunity to become a senator, and they think if they just keep throwing a lot of money into the campaign of the challenger that they're going to win. People are not concerned about how much money you spend in your campaigns anymore. That doesn't matter. People are concerned about this. Can you deliver on what you say? Are you going to take care of the people the way that you say? You're going to stop people from being evicted? Are you going to help out the homeless? What about the sick and the suffering? What about people who are returning from prison back into society? Whether you think they're the scourge of society or not, everybody's not going to stay locked up for the rest of their lives. There are no pre-entry programs for individuals who come from prison who rightfully deserve a second chance. Everybody is not the worst of the worst, the way that the government and the way that the district attorneys try to make it appear to be. White collar crime is more perversively wicked than other kind of crimes. But the people who commit the white collar crimes are the ones who seemingly get away with it all the time. And this is the reason why there's still going to be many, many problems going into the midterm elections. All is not well in Washington. Whether people believe it or not, according to Fox News, the biggest omission in Trump's State of the Union and why they matter in 2026. Now, this is coming from the Republicans' favorite network, Fox News. Morgan Phillips wrote this article. President Donald Trump delivered a sweeping State of the Union address Tuesday night, promoting new policy proposals on retirement savings, energy infrastructure, and congressional ethics while touting his administration's record on broader security, the economy, and global military operations. But despite the wide-ranging speech, which includes calls for a congressional stock trading ban, a new 401k-style retirement option, and ongoing nuclear negotiations with Iran, several areas notably were absent or only briefly addressed. Can I tell you something? America does not want another war. People don't care about a war with Iran. How is going to a war with Iran going to help the average family? Your sons and your daughters are going to be on the front lines. Know this. Let me say that again. If America decides to go to war with Iran, your sons and your daughters are going to be on the front lines and they're going to pay the price. And you're going to be mad and upset if they come back maimed, wounded, or deceased. War is not always the answer because the only people who profit from war are the manufacturers and the war mongers. The omissions matter in 2026 as the administration heads into a pivotal year marked by record federal debt levels, cooling job growth, intensifying great power competition with China, and ongoing global instability. With Congress narrowly divided and international tensions high, the State of the Union offered a key opportunity for the president to outline how his second-term agenda will address long-term fiscal sustainability, labor market momentum, and U.S. strategy abroad, questions that remain central to lawmakers, markets, and U.S.'s. So what's the problem? Despite emphasizing economic growth. Well, yeah, there's economic growth for the rich and the powerful. Let's tell it the way it is. For the rich, the wealthy, and the powerful. They're the only ones profiting during this time. People who make six-figure digit incomes are profiting. Corporate CEOs are profiting. Mega entrepreneurs are profiting. Corporations who depend upon governmental contracts and subsidies are profiting. So that is a true statement. But the everyday American is far from happy. They're not happy. They're not profiting. They're not gaining anything. As a matter of fact, they are losing. Have you checked the average price for rent in New York City and other places? Have you looked into it? Have you looked into the stock market and see how many people actually are losing money as opposed to making money? Have people considered the fact that more people have been fired and lost their jobs within almost 2 years? And those of you who may have a couple of dollars in the bank, quote, close quote, and you don't feel the pinch, it doesn't bother you, so you don't care. You still live in your gated community, you get your lattes, you go to your Starbucks, you walk your dogs to the dog park, and all that stuff that y'all do. So you don't feel the brunt of what everyday people are dealing with. Single mothers struggling, elderly people struggling, young people trying to find their way in life struggling. And this is the reason why the Republicans are worried about the upcoming midterm elections. So despite emphasizing economic growth and vowing to root out fraud, the president did not lay out a detailed plan to address the nation's $38.56 trillion debt or the long-term solvency of Social Security and Medicare. Because they want to gut it. They want to privatize Medicare. It's no secret. They've talked about it. Trump's big, beautiful bill, 2025 tax and spending legislation, is protected by the Congressional Budget Office to add another $4.2 trillion to the deficit throughout the next decade. This is coming from Fox News, from their financial analysts. The Supreme Court's ruling striking down his universal tariffs creates a $2 trillion revenue gap that the president didn't address. He claimed alternative status would fill it, but there's potential for courts to strike down those as well. Ladies and gentlemen, before I take my first break, let me read this next statement. The issue also has prompted concern within Trump's own party. Representative Lloyd Smucker, Republican from Pennsylvania, while praising the president's address, warned afterward that the national debt poses an existential threat that must be addressed to preserve economic stability for the next 250 years. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let me break it down like this before I take this first break. When you talk straight to people, people may be upset. They may be mad. They may be angry. But at least they'll respect you because you told them the truth. And that seems to be the hardest part with politicians. They're more concerned about their approval ratings than anything else. They're concerned about how good they look on TV. They're concerned about how well the speech went over. So they're not concerned about the people. America is comprised of its citizens. Without the citizens working, you cannot collect money for taxes. When the economy falters, taxation suffers because you can't get what people don't have. And that's a fact. If people don't have jobs, how are they going to pay taxes? If the average working parents, notice I said parent or parents, that could be male and female, if they don't have what it takes to take care of themselves and their family, how do they contribute to the economic growth of a country that will not help them in their time of need? Big corporations and big donors get help from the government all the time. But the average person will walk into the bank and ask for a small or SML, SBL, small business loan. And then the bank officer is sitting there looking at you, first of all, with such a disdain and disgust in their eyes. And you're only asking to borrow a couple of $1,000s from the bank. And they want you to sign over your whole life for a couple of $1,000s. You just need to get over the hump that you're in. You're trying to get caught up on some bills. It's a relatively small amount of money in comparison to how much money the banks take in every single week. You can't go to a loan shark. You know how loan sharks are. You can't go to them to get any money because you never pay them off. You're always indebted to a loan shark. How many people are drowning in gambling debt right now? Because they thought if I just hit a lucky streak at the casino or online gambling, online betting, then everything will be all right. Why do you think they offer you free bonus this and free bonus that? It's to entice you, to lure you, to draw you in, to make you think you're going to get something for nothing. And let's face it, everybody is not going to win the lottery. Everybody's not winning the lottery. When was the last time somebody in your state won a mega billion lottery ticket? It's always way down in Des Moines, Iowa, all these far off places, and somebody that's almost 100 years old wins the lottery. We have to think about these things, ladies and gentlemen. These are real things here. Whether people want to believe it or not, whether they want to accept it or not, whether they want to join in it or not. It's really serious. And a lot of people think that it's a game. It's not a game. Trying to find my break music over here to see if this is it. No, that's not it. I just want people to be able to be able to take care of their families. I mean that. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I have to take a quick break. Tyrone Bowman live. I'm talking about the State of a Union address that went down last night. Analysis and commentary. I'll be back in 2 minutes. All right, everybody, thank you. I'm back. Tyrone Bowman live. I'm talking about the State of the Union address that went down in Washington last night, and just bringing you some commentary and some thoughts at the same time. And one of the main things that people don't seem to understand is that if you do not address the issues of people's lives and try to help them to get them solved, they will turn against you. Doesn't matter how popular you were in the past. What have you done for me lately? You know how many marriages right now are suffering? People are going through all types of heartache, turmoil, and pain in America right now. And this is something people need to take seriously and stop thinking that everything is a joke, because everything is not a joke. When people are hurting, when people are in pain, when people are suffering, they're going to find ways to try to get relief. And many times, it's not in a positive way. And I'm going to say this much. And I'm going to do a special about it with analysis and statistics. Do you know that corporate America has invested itself in the prison business more so than the people business in trying to help them? It's a fact of life. People do get in trouble. Whether they're famous, whether they're rich, whether they're poor, whether they're learned or unlearned. Sometimes there are things that happen in people's lives. And just because somebody has been to prison, that doesn't mean that they're the scum of the earth. And because some folk haven't been to prison, that doesn't mean that you are a saint. For the most part, people get away with doing wrong. And they think because they've gotten away with it that they've gotten by. So if you watch the State of the Union address, what did you think about it? What were your takeaways from the State of the Union address? And if you feel as though that all your issues have been aptly addressed, then say so. If you're content with the way things are in America, be proud to be a MAGAite and own it all. See, you can't own one part and not own the rest. And the reason why individuals don't really understand what's really going on in this country, because they don't want to. People want to hear what they want to hear when they hear it. And if they don't hear what they want to hear, what do? They turn a deaf ear to it. Because that's not what they want to hear. Now let's see how the UK. Check this out. Supreme Court justices were stone-faced as Trump railed against tariffs. Even the Supreme Court justices did not like a lot of things that went down last night. According to The Hill, an article by Zach Schofield and Ellie Lee, for President Trump, there were hardly fireworks. But for a moment, the chief executive forced the four Supreme Court justices who showed up to his State of the Union to be stone-faced in front of millions of Americans as he railed against them in the decision striking down those global tariffs. The Supreme Court, unfortunate involvement, Trump called their majority decision to strike down a bulk of his tariffs by ruling his use of emergency powers to impose those duties were unlawful. It marked the most direct call out of the court at the address in years. Still, it hardly ranked among the president's most scorching burns. The Supreme Court has all but moved into the White House. They've given him total, absolute, autonomous power to do whatever he wants. The Supreme Court, for the most part, has gone along with every decision that has been made. The average person can't even get an audience with their own local attorney. Forget about trying to get someone in the Supreme Court to listen to your case or hear it. And these justices, the majority of them, they're bought and paid for. There's something I learned a long time ago, and it is true. When you have something to hide or somebody is blackmailing you and holding something over top of your head, you keep quiet and you try to appease them every step of the way. Example, a man who cheats on his wife and he knows that his wife knows, but she doesn't say anything to him. Her attitude displays it, her personality displays it, and she goes through all the normal things that she would normally do. But deep down the inside of her mind, she's plotting how to get even with him. And the Supreme Court, they have made colossal mistakes, but they'll never acknowledge it. They'll never own up to it. So, every Friday, hours after the ruling, Trump made it clear he's absolutely ashamed of the 6 justices who ruled against him. Well, what is the Supreme Court supposed to do? Is the Supreme Court supposed to acknowledge the populace or just give the politicians what they want? So the Hill further states that Trump and the Democrats were trading barbs during the State of the Union, and the president outlines arguments for war in Iran. Maha, frustrated with Trump's executive order, the new UK ambassador looked to turn the page. I'm summing it up. Tensions erupted within seconds of Trump's entering the chamber Tuesday night, as Trump stopped to take photos with lawmakers. Representative Al Green, a Democrat from Texas, held up a sign behind the president that read, "Black people aren't apes," a reference to a video Trump posted of former President Obama and former First Lady Michelle Obama that was later deleted. Quote, "The president has depicted Black people, 2 prominent Black people, the president and the First Lady, as apes. That cannot go unnoticed," Green, who was ejected from Trump's address to Congress last year after heckling the president, told The Hill after being escorted out again Tuesday. "I applaud the representative for standing up for Michelle and Barack Obama. They are not apes. They're not gorillas. They're not baboons. They're not orangutans. I know some of y'all think they are, because you still got this racist thing going on. It's not even overt racism in America anymore. It's outright racism and bigotry and prejudice. And then they think that we, as Black people, are not supposed to say anything about it. That's where people get it all messed up. We are not going back to a time in America where our ancestors lived, and during the civil rights movements and Jim Crow and those times when Black people were just killed, lynched, burned, turned into jockeys. I saw some of the stamps that they used to have depicting Black people as apes and gorillas. There's so many artifacts that are in the Smithsonian. That's why they want to get rid of them, because of a populace of people. That's how they thought. Now, is that an indictment against all white people? No, it is not. I'm talking about that segment. There are millions upon millions of white people who overwhelmingly voted for Barack Obama and put him in the White House. And while I'm thinking about it, Senator Mitch McConnell has been the most pathetic Senate Majority Leader I have ever seen in the history of the Senate. McConnell is not in his right mind. He's 84 years old and listen, come on. I know 84-year-olds and I know what they're dealing with and I know what they're going through. And it's not pretty. The man is desperately ill. But they want to keep him in the Senate just so he has a vote. They don't care if he dies in the Senate, as long as he votes their interest in the way they want him to. Trump said all Democrats, every single one of them, voted against these massive tax cuts. They wanted tax increases. He also blamed Democrats for the current shutdown of the Department of Homeland Security. The White House and Democrats are engaged in a standoff over restoring funding for DHS, but are diametrically opposed on the subject of potential immigration enforcement reforms because they want to give ICE more money. And the Democrats said, you know what? Enough is enough. That's the only leveraging power that they have. What would you do? I propose the question to you. What would you do if you were a politician with major power? How would you solve the problems that are going on in America? What would you do? Suppose, hypothetically, some ICE murdered one of your loved ones down in Minnesota. What would you think then? You know, there were calls seemingly references to Renee Good and Alex Pretty, who were killed in Minneapolis at the hands of ICE. Trump referenced Minnesota only to speak against members of the Somali American community, whom he said were involved in the ongoing fraud scandal in the state. A number of Democrats also protested by wearing pins urging the Trump administration to release the files of Jeffrey Epstein, a nod to their claims of lack of transparency. All right, let me just say this about Epstein's files. You know who I care about? I care about the victims. I care about these living victims and these women right now who are still alive and who were victims of Jeffrey Epstein. And nobody, I mean, nobody wants to listen to them. They can't get a voice. They can't get a hearing. No one wants to believe them. You've got Ghislaine Maxwell. She will open up her mouth and speak truthfully because she's using it as a bargaining chip as to what she knows. She wants her sentence commuted, and then she's going to want to be pardoned unconditionally. And then she's going to want her record cleansed and erased, when she was one of the chief culprits alongside Epstein in doing the things that he is alleged to have done. Isn't that what prosecutors are always saying in court? The victim, the victim, the victim. Isn't that what prosecutors always say in court? Then why aren't people speaking up for the victims right now? Where are the prosecutors' voice for the victims? What is wrong with hearing from them? People keep talking about the files. I don't care about the files. I care about the people who are hurting and who are dealing with suffrage because of the things that they endured. It's easy for a bully to beat up people and then tell them to shut up. It does not hurt. that when people stand up to a bully, then the bully gets mad. This is the America we live in right now, whether people want to believe it or not. And there are too many people in this nation today and sometimes once politicians win the election, they still think they're on the campaign trail because they never deal with the issues that they're supposed to deal with. And in another note, House lawmakers are preparing this week to grill former President Clinton and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton as part of Congress's investigation into the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, because they think they're going to hear some things that's going to incriminate the Clintons, but the Clintons are not stupid. Both of them are brilliant lawyers. And both of them have brilliant lawyers representing them. And I can tell you now, they're not going to get any incriminating evidence whatsoever against the Clintons. And they're going to do what the rest of them do. They're going to be evasive and they're going to plead the fifth. It's easy to think that Bill Clinton, who God knows he's had his share of problems when he was president, he was no angel. See, I tell it the way it is. Clinton did some horrible things, especially the thing with Monica Lewinsky. And he was impeached for that, remember? But the Senate voted not to remove him from office. So when the Clintons come before the House, they're going to be just as contrite as the Republicans who came before the same committee. So the high-profile depositions, that's all it is, ladies and gentlemen, is scheduled for Thursday and Friday in New York, come after months of haggling between Clinton's attorneys and leaders of the Oversight and Government Reform Committee, which had voted unanimously to issue a subpoena for their testimony last July. It goes to what I'm saying. Their lawyers are not going to allow them to say anything that's going to incriminate them. The proceedings are extraordinary, not only for the fact that a former president is being dragged before Congress, but also because Democrats had joined the effort to compel their testimony. You know, sometimes I wonder about the Democrats. I really do. Whose side are you really on? Sometimes. Who did the Democrats really speak for? That's why I get on their case as much as I do. They don't have the intestinal fortitude and the stick-to-itiveness. They don't have the fight in them like many of the Republicans do. This is a war. It may be a political war, but it's a war. All right, I've got a lot of ground to cover tonight. Got some other videos I have to make. They're not going to be political videos either. It's about some other things that are happening in the nation. They should be addressed. All right, ladies and gentlemen, as always, thank you for watching. Never surrender, never quit.